Good evening or morning. It depends on when this gets posted, but this is the RFHL. I've been calling it the Podcast, and we're the Podgers with a hard J. But good morning, good evening, whatever time it is. If it's Monday night, 6:10 in the evening, or Tuesday, 6:10 in the morning, doesn't matter. You're getting your RFHL Week 3 podcast. So I wanted to invite a couple new folks and new faces to the podcast tonight. I'm really excited for this one. Tonight we've got Brett Siebert, the Scorpion, with us, and we've got Brian D'Angelo. How are you guys doing tonight?
Doing well. Happy to be on the show.
Yeah, same. I just wanted to let you know, though, too, it's still GIF and not GIF.
Oh, all right.
I know you like your hard J's.
We'll talk about it later. I've got proof.
All right.
From my side.
I'm with Brett on this one. It's 2-1.
Oh man. Well, you are in graphics and design, so but this could be a tough one to fight. So this evening we've got a new segment for everybody that I think is going to be pretty exciting. I'm excited for it. I've been talking to Commissioner Sweetmeat for a couple of days about the slides that I've been putting together for this. We're really trying to up the production value around here a little bit, so I'm excited for that. So tonight we're going to be unveiling for the first time this season the RFHL power rankings. So we're going to be power ranking some teams. We've got 2 weeks under our belt so far. I think everybody's getting a little bit of a feel for how their teams are going and how the gym is playing. And we got a lot of rookies this season, so they're getting a feel for how the style of play goes along. And I think you're starting to see teams settle in. So I think it's a good time to start ranking some teams and maybe getting some people upset about how they're ranked and putting that bulletin board material out there. So before we jump into that, I kind of just want to hear about how you guys thought week 2 went and how you guys thought some of the matchups played out. I know there was the big, elephant in the room was that 6:30 matchup, which set a new record for most goals in a game by a single team. And that was what Tsunami Tacticians, I think, broke that record. But all the matchups seemed pretty good. So I'm curious what you guys' thoughts were. Brett, what did you think about the matchups this week?
I actually thought they kind of put everything I thought I saw in week 1 on its head a little bit. There are some teams I thought played really great in week 1 that, I think probably would admit they didn't have their greatest week in week 2. So I thought I had a good idea when we were talking about doing the rankings of where everyone was going to be. And then this past week, I think kind of threw everything for a wrench. But say that first game, especially, just one of those games I think that got out of hand. So not sure how much we can really gain from that first one.
Yeah, it's tough because there's always, I think at least maybe 2 or 3 games out of all of them, out of the whole season, 4 games a night, 10 weeks plus playoffs. There's always a handful of games where it goes either a way that you didn't expect or it just went like really notably you remember it and you can't really judge how that game went because of it, because it's, everybody has like a bad night or something might kind of happen or a team might come in just hot and maybe really upset with how the week before went. And now they're just a bunch of wasps ready to sting. So, it's funny you say that because you're right. It was very noticeable, that 6:30 game, but also at the same time, it was something that I don't know if you can really judge a ton from it or at least extrapolate out how the rest of the season's going to go because of that. But Brian, what do you think about the matchups this past week?
Well, I want to rebuttal that with a question. Are you blaming our team for the avalanche that occurred during that first game that, we spiked the anger in Tsunami? Are you saying that?
Yeah, well, somebody has to be the earthquake that puts the tsunami in motion, right? So you would think maybe that would have been Le Tremblement. But, week 1, we came out and I think everybody was talking about how powerful the offense for Tsunami was going to be. I think everybody kept saying, look at that floor. There's snipers and snipers and snipers on that team. And then we held them to 7, I think. Yeah. But also put up 14. And it was the biggest goal differential of week 1. So I'm not saying it was us, but I am saying that, sometimes you think about how last week went and you come in a little bit pissed off and you play a little harder, and poor Brandon got the brunt of it.
Yeah, you know what? I'm with Brett on this. I don't think you can pull a ton from that game. I was trying to pull some stats that weren't generated. Like, we don't actually record how many shots each team takes, and I checked out the stats on that. That the Tsunamis took 99 shots in that first game. The closest game else in this entire season so far has been 69 shots in the game. So they have massively swung the pendulum. And obviously they were without Fos, so it's tough to register. But man, that was a tough one. I think I talked to Brett when I walked in. Like, I logged in and was watching it on the stream while I was driving. I wasn't watching, I was listening. And I hopped on with, like, in 5 minutes in, and I was like, oh yeah, it's a 1-0 game, as I'm squinting at my phone. And then all of a sudden I hear Pete say, and that's a 1-9 game. And I'm like, what the like just happened? So, and then it only got crazier from there. So I don't want to, make Storm Surge the topic of discussion too much. I feel bad for them. It's never good to be on the wrong side of the record books. But I would say most of the other matchups in the night were fairly even. The game you and I announced, was pretty close. It was 6-9, and honestly, I think it was closer than that. The score showed. The last game, I didn't get to see the last game. I caught a little bit of the stream, 4-6, and and I think we had a good outing in the third game. So, all in all, I think all the teams are still strong. We said it last year. There was a lot of parity in the league, and I think this year translates to that same scenario too.
Yeah. 30. I think they were playing well, shoot. Anyways, you're right. It was, the final score was 6-9, but if you remember, it was a 1-goal game with about 3 minutes left. So I think I even said to you, did I cut out there for a second?
You cut out briefly, but you're back now.
Oh, well, there we go.
Yeah,
well, that'll be a fun blooper for the highlight reel later. But anyways, there was a fun moment where it was only a 1-goal game, about 3 minutes left. And I remember you and I saying in the press box, we were calling it afterwards, that afterwards, when we saw the final score, 6-9, that we wanted to make sure people knew that game was closer than it looked. Because when you see a 3-goal game, I would say that's probably average for the win margin in this league. It's always a couple, but I think when you see that score, you don't realize that it was a 1-goal game with 3 minutes left in a very physical matchup at that 7:30 game. So, I think you hit the nail on the head with that one. And I didn't catch all of the 9:30 game myself. I watched it after the fact, and saw that game. And I thought that was, we talked about that one being, I think, in the preview, as being one of the matchups that should be tight, as well. But in our game, I felt like yet again, there was kind of a settling down. I don't know if you felt that way too, but like the first period, and I think most teams feel this way, but the first period, you felt like things were going well. They were going the way we wanted them to go, but we still needed to kind of adjust. And then the second and third period, I felt like we kind of settled in again, played what we wanted to play, and we were able to get the game plan we wanted. And Kenton is playing like out of his mind right now, right? So let's give him some due here. He's averaging 5 goals against. It's 2 games, but 5 goals against average, almost a 90% save percentage. Brett, what do you think about that? Reigning goalie of the year over there. I want to see what you think about, like, Kenton's numbers right now. They look great, but also all the goalies. What do you think about them?
I mean, Brandon's performance notwithstanding, we'll throw that out the window. I think everyone's kind of been playing really, really well, which is fun for me. It kind of gives me a little motivation to play well. But I guess I'll comment on your guys' game from like an outside perspective. I was a little surprised, and I think that game kind of fed into what I was talking about, that it's kind of hard week to week, especially early on, to fully get a grasp of how these games work, because my team played Newberry's team, Talking Twisters, in the first week, and they were just all over us. And I think they'd probably admit they probably didn't have the game that they thought they were going to have in week 2. But I mean, you guys looked awesome too. So it's so early to tell, what's one team not playing up to their strength and what's another team just totally dominated them. But I mean, Ken played awesome. I haven't seen him play in a couple of years, at least a couple seasons for sure. But I mean, if he's keeping you guys under, my thing is always, if you can keep a team under 8, you've done your job as a goalie, and Kenton's kind of surpassing that obviously so far. I mean, he's making it look pretty easy, and that's him. And then that's obviously you guys playing defense, giving him easy shots. So, but overall, I mean, the talent goalie wise is just awesome. Like it's fun to see. It makes things a lot harder to score, which ironically, you don't normally see those 26, 22 games anymore. Like we used to see at the Y all the time.
Yeah, it's funny. All the goalies, you're right, I feel like have stepped up. They've really elevated their game. And I, being a former goalie myself, and Kenton playing the floor for several seasons, but now going back to goalie, I think you said it best when you said, when you see the other goalies doing well, we joke about the goalie union, right? So I want to bring that up because there's this joke that there's a secret society, the goalie union, and consider this at the official unveiling that the goalie union does exist. But you root for the other goalies, right? You there is that brotherhood of like knowing what it's like to play the position. You want the other goalies to do really well, and you also feel very motivated by seeing the other goalies do well. And I think you said that best when you said it makes you play better. It makes you want to play harder. Playing goalie in hockey, I've always kind of felt like if you had to equate it to any other position in sports, it's kind of like being the starting pitcher for a baseball team, where you really want to go out there and you want to get that win. Wins do feel like a goalie stat to me, because you want to go out there, you want to get that win, but that goals against average is kind of like your ERA, and you really want to make sure that you're setting the stage for your team to be able to do well, because if you can keep it under 8 and your guys score 9 or 10 every time, there you go. You're doing well. But you also said it best that after 2 weeks, it's hard to judge anything. So I think that's a perfect segue into the unveiling of the official judgmental part of this podcast. We're going to be having the RFHL official-ish power rankings going forward. So I'd like to unveil this now for everybody, and we will go through at least the order of teams that I think we are right now, and go from there. So please enjoy and take a moment to really think about this list and think about it very hard to see if it's actually correct, because it is definitely not. We all know it is not. But so here you go, some power rankings of the RFHL spring season so far.
Someone got PowerPoint happy here this week.
Not gonna lie, I'm a big fan of some transitions. So in the number 8 spot, I've got Storm Surge right now. I'll give you my very brief, look, they're already shaking their heads. I'll give you my very brief synopsis for each one of these. So with Storm Surge, it was really hard to pick the bottom 2 or 3 teams. And really what it came down to me so far is I can only judge the team by how they're doing so far and what we've seen. I know they were missing Fos this week. That's a major part of their game plan. But I'm looking at that goal differential by Storm Surge, and I was looking at that before the week 2 game as well. Obviously, that kind of blew things out of the water, but the goal differential and how many goals they've scored as a team, I think it goes up from there. But right now, I've got them in that 8 spot. Number 7, I've got Sinkhole Sidewinders, another team that I think, obviously, again, so hard to choose the bottom teams because everybody is very even this season. But another team where week 1, they were missing their first round pick, Brad Haynes. And we all know how much he brings to the table for a team in terms of scoring and playmaking ability. Even if you just measure his game in terms of possession, he can really command a game. So obviously, I think that week 1 was tough without him. Week 2, they played a lot better. So I've got them in that 7 spot. Number 6, Meteor Mayhem. Had to put Bob just a little ahead of his son, Bob ahead of Brad. I've got Meteor down here only. I had a feeling you'd be a little upset with me here on this one, Brett, but I had Meteor down here only because, again, I feel like their scoring is not hitting the potential that we all know they have. They've got Bob. They've got Mike, rookie Mike, who has a lot of familiarity with Bob. And then, of course, the two of them have played a lot with Paul Paradine, who we all know is, I think he's statistically the RFHL's all-time leading scorer. So we know for a fact that they have more offense. I think it's just a matter of putting it together right now. I think they just are looking for that groove. And once they find out what that, what style fits best for them, they're going to start playing really great. So in the 5 spot, and this is where it got tricky. I think like 5 through 3, 5 through 2 was pretty tough for me. But in the 5 spot, I've got Tipsy Talking. These are not, I don't think these reflect perfectly like the standings in terms of, and maybe you guys can see that, and I can't right now, but it doesn't reflect the standings. But I think I took into account a couple things. And one of the things that I looked at with these guys is that right now, they look like they play a really high pressure game, but that high amount of pressure is wearing them down towards the end of the game. So they get a little slower. They press a little less in the late second, third period. And I think that that's only because it's week 2. We all know that by week 6, week 7, week 8, all these teams are kind of getting in the groove. They're getting in shape. Guys are getting in shape, right? Shaking off the rust. And getting better. So I think they go up from there as well. Sooner or later, someone's got to go down, right? If everybody's going up from there, someone's got to go down. So we'll see. And where I put Tsunami this week, again, I really did not want to take into account what I think is a game where they were, they scored so much, but I also don't think that that's sustainable. It's definitely an outlier, right? So I put them in the number 4 spot because so far we don't know what we've seen from them, right? Week 1, they didn't score. They scored 7 goals. And week 2, they scored, 26, 27, something like that. I can't remember exactly. It was so many. But we don't know what we've got from them just yet. And maybe they don't either. And again, teams will find their footing and go from there. But I've got Tsunami in that 4 spot right now because they're a little bit of a mystery still. And we'll see what happens. And which Tim are they going to get? Because Tim looked great this past week, and he can have some really good games in that. So I think that makes a big difference. All right, 3 spot, Fukushima face-off. I wanted to. I put a list together after week 1 just to see what might move after week 2, and finally unveil this. And I will admit that after week 1, I had Fukushima in the 2 spot. And I knocked them down just a little bit because one of the things I noticed this past week was that in week 1, they passed so well. They were passing like crazy. We were talking about on the broadcast how much they were moving the puck well, making plays, scoring goals, and then also grinding the way that we expected them to grind. But in week 2, they seemed a little disjointed. And again, some of that is that feeling out process. It's getting used to the line changes. It's getting used to your, pairing preferences with who's on the floor. But they looked a little bit less cohesive than week 1. So I had to knock them down just a little bit in favor of my number 2 team, Les Tremblements. Now, I will tell you right now that I got that pronunciation correct. And I know I got it correct because my wife speaks French and she was the one who told me how to say it. And I've been practicing it for like 3 days because it's been the talk of the Discord is how do you say this? I've heard it on all the broadcasts. How do you say the team? Before we even unveiled the draft show, I think I was calling them like La Croissance because I wasn't even going to try, but it's Les Tremblements. And they looked great. And they've played steady games so far. And they are the only other undefeated team right now. 2-0, are they? So, yeah, I see Brian nodding his head. So they have a rookie on their team who was a little bit of an unknown compared to the other rookies, similar to our rookie. And so far, he looks great. And Dan is going to Dan. Dan Hook is going to do his thing out there. And then, of course, they've got the really the depth, I think, to be a tough team. So maybe a little bit of a homer call here, but in that number one spot, I've got Brian and our team, Firestorms Hockey Club right now. You know what? I'm gonna humble brag a little bit. We're playing well. We're playing well early. We're adjusting in games. You're shaking your head a lot over there.
Why?
Brian. It's
Why
making me
would you put
nervous.
a target on our back right off the get-go? Why?
I like a target on my back sometimes, but hey, we put the target on our own backs with our game 1 and game 2, I think, because week 1 we played against an offensive powerhouse and we held them to 7 goals, but we still put up 14. It wasn't like it was an all-out defensive, front. We still played well on offense. And then week 2, I think we came out in this game thinking that we're going to have our legs under us because Tipsy's such a high pressure team, and they were. And I think that team talk of what we were going to do, that game plan going in, it fit really well. We adjusted as the game went on. And then as we started to recognize that possession was increasing because everyone was getting tired, we also slowed the game down well. And I saw some really great passes. Brian, you're on fire, man. How many goals do you have so far this season?
I have 7, but that's not sustainable, man. We can't be relying on me as our primary goal scorer. That's not a recipe
for winning. I saw
winning.
some Zach Davis snipes though. It gave me flashbacks. So
yeah,
I'll take it.
There was a particular goal. I think I put the clip in the clip showcase where you scored from a very sharp angle, and you like short side top cheese, like silky middies, top corner.
Yeah. That's the one I'm talking about.
Yeah,
it was so good.
Well,
it was such a good shot.
It surprised me, put it that way. So, but even a blind squirrel finds a net every so often. So
did you black out for a quick second and then came to, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, Brian, what did you just do?"
Pretty much.
Yeah. But hey, you say it's not sustainable, but that's the point, right? Is that one of the reasons I've got our team up here right now is that everybody's contributing. I mean, top to bottom. And you were were you a 5th round pick this year?
Yeah.
Criminal. That's criminal to have you in the 5th round. So if you can get that kind of scoring top to bottom and we sustain that was one of the reasons why right now I put us at the top. And yeah, there might be a target because I'm saying it out loud and I'm putting a number behind it, but I also feel like the target's kind of already there with or without me showing it on screen. So here's my final rankings of all the teams. I am looking forward to the two of you absolutely tearing this apart. How about we go, Brian, you got the momentum right now. Let me know your thoughts. What would you have done different? What do you think about the rankings? Do you think I did all right? What would you change? Whatever. What are your thoughts here? Tear it apart.
I think I would shake this up fairly significantly if I'm being honest. Okay.
Right out of the gate.
Yeah, no, I mean, one, I would move us out of first. I think Le Croissant and that whole team they are just so balanced, and they have faced the number 1 draft pick and the number 2 draft pick, and they have beaten both. So to me, that's a pretty dominant statement. So I would put them number 2. I also think you're giving Brett's team some pretty significant disservice here at number 6. They beat Fukushima this week. I thought they controlled the majority of that game. I thought Fukushima over half of that game played this dump and run strategy that wasn't working for him. We said it on the broadcast. And I just think Meteor Mayhem had much more control of the puck in passing throughout that game. So I would have them. I would have them up a couple spots. I'd probably switch Tsunami and Fukushima right now, and I probably would get Meteor ahead of Fukushima as well. Storm, man, and I don't know what to do with 7-8 here, but having John Fose's team in last place just seems like it just seems wrong. And I know this, what the stats say and the goal differential and everything, but man, that's tricky. So,
yeah. And Brad, the second overall pick in the 7th spot, his team in the 7th spot.
Yeah. And he's coming off a season where they were in last place and then they won it all. So, I mean, maybe they're loving this right now. So.
Yeah, I think I said it earlier, but even looking at the list right now, that 6-5-4-3 was really tough to pick. It was really tough. And I think that that's going to be the kind of thing where all season long, because there's such great parity in the league, there's not going to be a lot that separates 1 and 8 even, which is why this is the very official-ish power rankings. But Brett, let me know what your thoughts are here. I cannot wait to hear. I almost put your team in the 4 spot just because you're so used to being in that number 4 area.
Oh, fair.
And then I didn't, but I had a feeling that as soon as your team was popping up, I was watching your window to see your face. So tear it up, buddy.
Well, so first I'll say, since you put yourself number 1, you're not allowed to say later that no one believed in you guys. Just, it's a common talking point with a lot of teams. So I'll say that off the bat. But I guess some of these points will kind of mirror what you guys already talked about. I think 1 and 2, you can kind of leave as like you could argue swap. I guess I just haven't seen Dan's team play yet. So I'll leave it 1, 2, how you've got it, just because I've seen you guys play and you guys were pretty impressive last week. 7, 8, Brian, to your point, like it's kind of crazy that we've got arguably the top 2 scorers and that those last 2 spots. But so far there's nothing, and again, this is because we're so early in the season, there's nothing that tells me they deserve to be higher than 7, 8, at least right now. And then you got kind of a whole mess in the middle that you could probably argue 100 different combinations. I'd like to put my team a little higher up there. But that first week, I thought we definitely was a little bit of a feeling out period and wasn't kind of our best game. And then I thought, last week we kind of put it all together and beat a pretty good team. You guys mentioned earlier was really, really close right up until, a couple garbage time goals. So all that to say, I'm not going to argue with your rankings too much, surprisingly. I think I'd kind of leave it how it is for now, just because that 3 to 6, you could totally argue and sway me probably a bunch of different times. And then, that 1, 2, 7, 8, just based on how the first 2 games have gone, I don't think you can kind of move those teams out of their spots at least.
I'm at a little bit of a loss of words right now, Brett.
Because I know. Just take it. Take it while you can get it.
I'm gonna, because if anybody on the outside, and maybe Kako might be able to attest, or maybe some of the people who are in our fantasy league chat can attest, Brett and I do not align very often. There are so many times where we might be talking about like a hockey player or a football player or a trade or something like that. And like, I actually always really end up kind of agreeing with what you're saying, but also at the same time, still like thinking, yeah, but I like my idea a little better. Right. So, but in all honesty, like I was kind of thinking like, of all the people who are going to tear apart these power rankings, it's probably going to be Brett. So
I kind of wish I could disagree with you a little bit more, but I think you kind of hit the nail on the head for the most part.
And that might just be, again, we've had 2 weeks. It's a week 3 preview podcast here. So there's not a lot to go off of. We've already seen some very, very obvious outlier games. And even if we were to kind of backtrack and talk about some of those games again too, I think Tsunami is going to shake that right off, Storm Surge is going to shake that right off. I don't know if Tsunami, as offensively powerful as they are, I don't know if they're going to be even a 15 to 16 goal per game team. They might still run into, like you said, all the goalies are stepping up, right? So I think that when you see a game like that, you recognize like, yeah, everybody has a bad game sometimes in that. Every time a team goes off like that, it's usually unsustainable. So there's not a lot to go off of. And I didn't want to be, directly reading the rankings in terms of the standings. So I kind of looked at a few additional little layers. And like I said, some of the things that stood out to me were teams where maybe their total goals for out of the 2 games so far, maybe the total goals that they've scored are quite a bit lower than I would expect for a roster like that. Or maybe if I noticed a team that had a pretty high goal differential, whether they were very in the positive or very in the negative, maybe that team is usually much more defensive, so those games are going to be tighter. And it was surprising to see that there was such a spread in terms of goal differential. There were a couple different things that went through my mind while I was making these, but the biggest thing that kept coming up is this means absolutely nothing. It's week 2, right? So
I think if
there's like later.
I think if there's 3 letters that can be emphasized the most in this entire thing, it is ISH, ish. This is ish. This is the classic week 1 of NFL where it gets released and they submit the power rankings and you're like, what the heck are they talking about here? So ish. This is ish-ish.
I was really hoping you'd see that too, because I tried to pick a font that looked like handwriting, like I wrote it in after the fact and everything. And I was like, man, I got Design Brian on with me here, so I can't wait to see what he thinks. A little bit of production value,
Yeah, it's the thing I will emphasize in this. So
yeah, and again, these are always just for fun, bulletin board material, whatever you want to call it. That's exactly what we're going for here. So, hey, let's move on and we'll talk about the week 3 matchups. Okay. And again, here you go. Your podcaster predictions and bulletin board material for every RFHLer. I want to go through all of these matchups one by one and really talk about how we think they're going to go, especially from what we've seen so far. So at 6:30, we've got Les Tremblements versus Meteor Mayhem. I'm excited to see this one because you said it best, Brian. I think you pointed out how well Les Tremblements is playing. And we also know how well Meteor Mayhem is capable of playing, especially with a Brett in net who's on fire. So I would love to see what this game is. Each week, all the games are broadcast now live on YouTube. Make sure you are liking and subscribing the YouTube page to catch those games. But each week we call the 6:30 game in broadcast world the game of the week, because it gets our very own Pedar out of his dad mode and back into RFHL mode. 3.5 hours away, broadcasting live for that game. So it is the game of the week. But I also picked this for the game of the week because I think this matchup is going to be awesome. I think this one is going to be maybe the game to watch. So if you haven't tuned into the stream yet, I really think you should give it a look, especially this game. I think is going to be awesome. But of course, then you get to stick around for more hockey. So at 7:30, we've got Fukushima face-off playing against Tipsy Talking Twisters. And this is, I think, the perfect matchup to talk about the dichotomy of a team so far. Tipsy Talking Twisters, week 1, holy cow, looked awesome. Week 2 looked great, but looked different than week 1. And you can say the same about Fukushima. So which version of each of these teams are we going to get in this matchup? And if the best version of both those teams show up, it's going to be another great game. This was maybe a close second for my game of the week. At 8:30, we have the Sinkhole Sidewinders and the Tsunami Tacticians. I am personally excited to see this one because I'd love to see what type of Tsunami Tactician team we get this week. Are they going to be the offensive powerhouse we saw in week 2? Are they going to be the team that I'll be honest, struggled on defense maybe in week 1? Which version of that team are we going to get? And especially knowing that they're going to have to keep up a lot of offense when they go up against Sinkhole Sidewinders, who, if they have Brad, they're always capable of putting up numbers, right? So I think it's going to be the kind of game where you might see this one be closer than all the rest. It might be tight, but it could be tight and high scoring. So we'll see what happens. And last but not least, at 9:30, we've got Brian, myself, Firestorm Hockey Club up against Storm Surge. Again, do they have Fos? Which version of Brandon is going to be there? Again, it keeps coming down to the same story, right? it's week 2. Which team is which team? Who is who? What do they look like? I don't think anybody has a solid read on any single team just yet. So which Storm Surge is going to be there? And then in terms of our gameplay, not going to want to give a lot away, but I think it always comes down to, I think maybe the buzzword this season so far, Brian, and you can tell me if I'm right or not, is adjustments. I've seen that one come up in the chat a couple times, but yeah, let's see what we can do to a game plan again for yet another really good team. So all of the teams, all of the matchups, again, that 6:30 is my game of the week. But here's all your matchups for the next week. We got about 10 minutes left, so I want to hear about what you guys think of each of the matchups. Talk about what you think is going to happen in each game. And then once everybody's done that, we'll go around and do some predictions. So I'm going to flip a coin. Brian, what do you got? Talk to me.
All right. I agree with you on the game of the week. I think that is, both of those teams are very balanced. I think they match up really well against one another. I'm just excited to see if Les Tremblants, I did not get that as good as you did.
No, it was good.
No, is gonna keep being sustainable in this. This is a goalie matchup to me. You got Mark versus Brett. This is it's honestly, I think it's gonna come down to the goalies. Who is on their game the most on that one?
Yeah, I agree. What do you think about 7:30?
I think this one is a team of just polar opposite builds. I think Tipsy Talking Twisters is super lean and fast and grind it out, but can they sustain that for all 3 periods? Because they didn't last week. And Fukushima is a gritty team, but it's one of those ones where I don't think Furlano's yet to take over a game like he typically does, and I want to see that out of them. So be curious on that one. On the 8:30, if I'm just going through these quick, I think I don't know if the tacticians can sustain. They're not going to get the record breaking goal scoring that they got last time against St. Cole, and I think Alex is in for a challenge in that game. But one thing about that team is they're the one team that has 2 rookies on it. So part of me wonders too how long it takes to gel with 2 rookies. Especially when, it's kind of a quiet, outside of Alex, that's a quieter team. Brad kind of is not the vocal. He's a leader on the floor, but he's not the vocal leader. So I'm curious if there's some dynamics there. I'd be interested to hear from Rob or someone on that team, how he thinks that build is. And my game, I'll save my thoughts for my game when we do the predictions.
Oh, all right. Brett, what do you think of all these matchups?
I think this bulletin board material it gave everyone is going to be interesting, but I'll just go through. So not to, just copy Brian here, but first game, I think it's going to be Mark versus me, which is always fun for me. Always like those goalie matchups, but I think on paper, we're pretty even. I think a lot of our guys sort of cancel out the other team, quote unquote. So really, I think it's going to be a very low scoring kind of game of inches. Who scores last? To be honest, it's going to be a 1-goal game. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be fun. And then 7:30. I think this is going to be a get right game for one of these teams. They kind of had probably not. I think they would all agree their best showing last week, or at least I think there's more for them to show. So, this one I gotta say too is just gonna come down to kind of who, again, this is gonna be goalie union, but who makes that last save. I think Matt versus Kazmark is another awesome, goalie matchup. And then I'll try and not spend too much time on each one, but 8:30. I think if Brad listens to this at all, you might have woken him up a little bit because, sorry, who's their goalie? Tim. Yeah, Tim's going to be in for a fun night, I think. So if he plays well, that game will be close, but, that one I could see maybe getting away from a team. It kind of depends on how the game starts off, I guess. And then 9:30, again, I think you might have poked the bear a little bit here. I kind of see foes coming out and just, putting Ken under barrage. So no pressure, Ken, but I think this is going to be kind of his game to prove if, he can keep this up the rest of the year, or if, first 2 weeks maybe were more of a fluke. But I've got full faith in him. I think he's going to hold up to it. So,
yeah, it's going to be a good test. I think that's a good way to put it. And I appreciate that, because I know Kenton will watch this and he'll get excited about that, because he's been pretty fired up, I would say, in our team chat. And I like seeing how confident he is in that, and not just, because he's having a good season, but also just generally looking forward to every week playing, as hard as he has been playing. So,
right. And one goalie point I guess I'll make is, like, you can kind of see when guys are fighting the puck a little bit and, they're not quite on their game. And, Ken just looks like he knows where the puck's coming, where the puck's going. He's moving, he's in the right place. Like, I don't really think I've seen him make any, like, sprawling diving saves, which are obviously more fun, but I think if you're kind of boring, quote unquote, as a goalie, like, you're doing your job. So,
yeah, we've been saying that for a long time to each other, haven't we? When you have a goalie who makes the flash saves, that's what most of the league, I think, remembers, or might even add to the weight of where they vote.
Excessive windmills in a game? Is that what you're talking about?
Well, those are always appreciated,
no.
Right? I think we're talking about, like, when you see a guy who really has to make that desperation save and then makes it, and you get all the wild hooting and hollering on the stage from everybody who's there. That always ends up getting the attention, I think, enough where maybe it weighs even in that end of your voting when somebody's picking a goalie. But Brett and I have always said for a long time, and some of the other goalie union goalies have agreed, that when you have a goalie who is, I think, how did you put it, Brett? You were saying like he's feeling it, or you said he's not fighting it. When a goalie's not fighting the puck and their positioning is great, the saves should look easy. And to me, that's a goalie that's playing at the top of their game. When they look so casual and like everything's just hitting them and they're not having to sprawl, it means their positioning's great. It means they're playing at the top of their crease. It means they're, cutting angles off the right way, or their endurance is, up and everything. When you see that, to me, that's more of what you want to see out of, I think, when you think of a top goalie, is they're just playing so calmly out of their mind. So that was a good way to put it.
I think one added note on the Kenton side of things is he trusts our team right now. And we've talked about this, how he trusts the people in front of him. We talked in our team chat. I mean, our team's leading in the block shots right now significantly. So Kenton knows, like, I'm not on my own. I got backup here. My team's going out and putting their body on the line for me. And so Kenton feels confident in matching up versus the shooter and going after it. So I think that's an added element to his game right now, and added confidence because he knows his team's supporting him.
Yeah, that's a really awesome point. And I think any goalie in the league would appreciate that.
Yeah. So kind of last thing I'll say about it too, I guess, is it also means your defense is playing well if you're making those kind of easy saves. And, goalie is I know you'll understand this too, it's such a heady position. Like, you've got a million things going on. If your defense is good enough to be like, okay, I just have to worry about this one shot, I just have to make this one save, it cuts down on, like, hey, I've got a guy streaking in from the left and, I got to watch my backside. If you can just focus on what's right directly in front of you, it makes things a lot easier.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's do some predictions and close this out for the night. I'm going to go through mine real fast, but by all means, if you got something to say when you do your predictions, feel free to say it, because we love that bulletin board material. And this week is really unleashing some bulletin board material. And I'm glad you guys picked up on that, because I really wanted to kick the hornet's nest a little bit for more than just the Tsunami Tacticians week 1. So, so for 6:30, I've got Meteor Mayhem in this one. Again, it's a goalie matchup. It's going to come down to a single goal. Is it going to be the team where they have those guys who have played together for so long in so many different avenues and arenas, Bob, Mike, Paul, that added bit of chemistry is what puts them over the top? I don't know. I've got Meteor in that one. For 7:30, I am going to take Tipsy Talking Twisters. I think this is going to be another grindy game. But I think that in terms of what Fukushima brings to the table with their team, the best way to counter that is to be that hyper forechecking team that Tipsy is. So if they can keep that up, I think, Brian, you said it, if they can keep it up all 3 periods, whew, that might be exactly the type of game you need to have to beat Fukushima. For 8:30, I think I'm going to take Sinkhole in this one. It's going to be an interesting matchup, but I think Brad, again, we've talked about him a lot tonight. I think Brad is going to help make that difference, and Tim's going to be under fire, a lot like what you said for Kenton from Fos in the 9:30. And I can never pick against my own team, so I'm going to pick Firestorm. But I am going to say that you both, I think, hit it on the head where I've put the target on our back. And I'm sorry, Brian. And I'm sorry, Kenton. And I'm sorry, Sweet. And I'm sorry, Mark. And I'm sorry, everybody. I'm sorry. But I think that this one's going to be a tight one too. It's going to come right down to the wire. And I think we're all going to go home hurting. And I'm just glad that because it's the 9:30 game, that I actually start a mini vacation the next day. So I don't have work the next day. So I'm okay with being hurt and not feeling great, but we'll see how it goes. So what are your predictions for this week, Brett?
I mean, kind of to your point, I can't pick against my team. I've got that confidence in our team that last week, especially in that last period, I think we kind of put it all together. We're passing around, moving a lot. But like I said before, when we were kind of talking about it, it's going to be last shot, I think, last one that goes in. But it's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it. 7:30, I'm going to go Fukushima. I'm not going to lie. I don't think this is a great matchup for Newberry's team. They're all running around like they hustle like crazy, but Fukushima, I mean, they're a tough, gritty team. Like, it's just, I don't know if they're going to be able to hold up to, a lot of physical play. So I guess we'll see. Maybe they can use that as bulletin board material and totally prove me wrong, which I look forward to. But I think Fukushima pulls this one off. But I think this is going to be another close game, another goalie game. 8:30. I think I got to go Sinkhole. I think you gave him the motivation to go off. So I think Foes is getting 7-8 goals in this game. I think he's going to go nuts. But surprising, I guess. It's early on, so you never know. But that's going to be mine, Sinkhole. And that last one, I gotta, rag on you a little bit. I gotta go Storm Surge here, just just to go the opposite way, But no, I think it's going to be a pretty close game as well. So
I appreciate that because we will take any motivation we can get. So if you want to count against us, let's hear it. Brian, what do you got?
All right. Yeah, I think the first game, Brett, you hit it on the head. I think this is going to be super close. I think it's going to be a 1-point game, and I gotta give it to Les Tremblements right now, just based off of how Dan's been playing, and I think Sean, the rookie, may be a big influence. Honestly, Shane too. We talked about Shane in the broadcast the other day, how he's been playing great D. I think he's going to match up well on Paul. So I'm giving it to Purple on that one. 7:30. I think this one is a bit of a toss up too, but I go with Fukushima on this one. I think I think based off of week 2, they seem to put it together a little bit more than Tipsy did. And I need to see Tipsy go a full 3 periods before I have enough confidence to pick them over Fukushima in this one. In the trend of going against 2.0 here, I'm going with the Tacticians in the 8:30. Honestly, it's kind of the same scenario. I need to see Sinkhole put together a complete game, and I just haven't seen it fully yet. And so, yes, I know last week was a fluke with the Tacticians, but I think their offensive firepower, I think Alex is going to have his hands full with them. So we'll see how that one goes. And lastly, I want to go on record right now as the first POJer to not be a homer. And I am picking Storm Surge in this one. If there's ever been a trap game, this is the trap game. Fos is back. If Fos is back, they're an angry team. that was rough last week. So I think Kenton, I love you, man. You've been playing awesome, but you're going to get an angry Foes this week, and we got to do everything we can to help and support you. But I don't want to give them any more bulletin board material, so I'm going to take at least this one off of their bulletin board and put it on ours, because I think that's going to be tough.
I'm glad you said that at the end, because I'm just over here thinking, oh, he's reverse psychologizing our team right now. He's giving our own bulletin board material up there. So, all right. Well, you know what? We got a couple days in the chat until next Wednesday. So, Brian, buckle up, buddy, because I think you're going to get hammered.
I think so too. But I'd rather have that than them talking about it in Storm Surge chat. So
there you
I'm
go.
Good.
There you go. Well, that was it for this week. I am so thankful to have had, this was a lot of fun. I hope we do the power rankings more often again. Maybe the rankings might be different each week. Who knows? But again, it's always fun to put the whole league is just playful banter, right? It's just everybody picking on everybody else and just regular guys going out, playing some hockey hard for, 45 minutes and then best friends again afterwards. So looking forward to this week. Thank you again for joining me tonight, Brian. Thank you again for joining me tonight, Brett. I am so excited to have had you guys, and I hope you guys had a lot of fun. What are your closing thoughts? Anything you got? Brian, what do you got?
No, this has been a blast. I'm glad we were able to chat on a Friday night about some RFHL, and yeah, I like the new segment. I think it's good. So excited to see what happens this week.
Brett?
Yeah, I'll just piggyback off that. This is a lot of fun. Thanks for having me on. Hoping I can get on again at some point. But yeah, use that bulletin board material, guys, for better or for worse.
Yes, and I would be remiss if I didn't say before we left, thank you, Brian, for my really cool background. I am so excited to have this going forward and being able to use it. I appreciate you doing that for me. Thank you so much.
Of course, happy to help, man.
All right, so everybody else out there, I'm going to leave it with the only way you leave one of these, and it is it Wednesday yet?